So one of the best things to watch, according to me, are travelogues. I mean, those people take you with them for a journey, and especially if it's well shot, so relaxing to watch. But when we go back in time, in the olden days, the closest thing we could find to travel vlogs would be travel diaries or travel namas. And other than being interesting reads, these travelogues have over time become very important historical evidence for what was going on in a certain time period because they provide invaluable insight. And one such travelogue was written by a guy called Ibn Jubayr, and his book was called Rihlat of Ibn Jubayr. And he tells us a very interesting story. Hi, my name is Misha and welcome to Tarikhi Tale. So, who was Ibn Jubayr? He was an Andalusian traveler who had left his home in the year 1183. And he had left for a pilgrimage actually. And when our story takes place, he was actually on his way back from the pilgrimage. And according to his book, on 18th October in the year 1184, he boarded a Genoese ship from the city of Acre in Palestine, and he was headed to Messina in Sicily. Now, just to give you a political background of the time period, the city of Acre from where he actually boarded was at this point in time under the rule of the Crusaders, and Sicily, where he was headed, was also under Christian rule from almost the last 100 years. Before that, Sicily was actually held by the Muslims. Another thing to note is that majority of the Arab travelers who traveled around this time, like Ibn Hawqal, Ibn Battuta, they all talk about the Europeans being very, very hostile towards foreigners and strangers. And because there was a constant war between Christianity and Islam, there was also this factor of hostility that came into play. Ibn Battuta even goes so far as to call Europe the land of darkness. So that's what was going on in the background, okay? So the ship that Ibn Jubayr had boarded was carrying both Christian and Muslim pilgrims who were coming back from their pilgrimage. And the usual trip from Acre to Messina would take about 10 to 15 days. So that's exactly what the people planned according to, right? They brought on provisions and food accordingly. But the Messina state was actually known to be very, very unfriendly towards ships, and these people were hit with some unprecedentedly bad weather. Now, what was supposed to be a 10 to 15 day journey turned into a 2-month journey, and things got really, really bad on the ship. And Ibn Jubayr actually describes the horrors of this journey in great detail. He talks about how the provisions and the food and the drinks had finished, and people who were only prepared for 15 days, or who were at sea for now more than 2 months, a lot of the people died. The people who had died were being thrown overboard. Some people got sick and they were also being thrown overboard. And the captain then decided to take all the money from all of the passengers on board and keep it for himself because things had gotten desperate by this point. And then finally, when the ship was only half a mile away from Messina, it actually tilted to its side and stopped. Now, this actually exposed a lot of the passengers to the possibility of drowning. Those who had survived this horrible journey of 2 months, who were almost reaching the shore, were now close to drowning because the ship had turned on its side, right? And this incident takes place on the 9th of December of the same year, 1184. And here, Ibn Jubayr talks about William II, who was the Norman king of Sicily at that time. He mentions that William II, when he heard about this incident and heard about the horrible journey that these passengers had had, he came to the shore himself and he stood there to kind of oversee the rescue mission, and he made sure that all the pilgrims who had remained on the ship and were still alive are properly rescued. Now, Ibn Jubayr really praises this King William because he says that the way that the rescue mission was carried out was that there were small boats that were sent towards this big ship, and then people would sit on these boats and come towards the shore. And by this point, as you know, the captain had taken all of the people's money, and a lot of the people did not have money to pay these smaller boats. But the king kind of took care of all of this, and he made sure that the pilgrims are not exploited and that they're taken off of the ship safely. Now, Ibn Jubayr speculates that had the king not arrived on the shore and had he not supervised this thing himself, the only thing that was going to happen was that this ship would have been plundered, the people on board would have been killed, especially the Muslims. Nobody would have cared about their lives. So all of this kind of made Ibn Jubayr talk really highly of this Norman king of Sicily. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, that at this time, the general view of the Europeans was not very hospitable or friendly, right? But some historians actually talk about this example of King William, and they talk about how the Normans initially came from Northern Europe. And the Normans actually had a habit of kind of adopting the traditions of the people over whom they ruled. So, as you mentioned before, that before the Normans took over Sicily, the Muslim Arabs were kind of controlling this area. And the Arabs are known to have a culture that is very, very hospitable and places guests on quite a high pedestal, right? So, it's very, very possible that the Normans, who then took over after the Arabs, kind of learned this trait from the locals and kept it. So I really like this incident because it's a very humane little thing that happened at the borders of Sicily, which kind of, restores some people's faith in humanity in a world which was even then heavily divided along religious lines. So there we go. That was a small story for today. Let me know if you enjoyed this video, and I will be seeing you guys next week. Bye.